The Color Purple wasn't just a film, it was a storm of raw emotions, broken silences, and unheard voices finally reaching the screen. Spielberg took Alice Walker's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel and turned it into a cinematic cry for hope, pain, and survival. But behind the camera, nothing was simple. The casting, the controversy, the moments that almost broke the crew. Everything had a story of its own. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about The Color Purple. Fact number 1. Spielberg almost walked away. Steven Spielberg at first didn't want to direct The Color Purple. He felt the story belonged to someone else, someone with a background closer to the world Alice Walker had written about. He worried that as a white director, he wouldn't be able to capture the nuances of Black life in the rural South. But producer Quincy Jones believed Spielberg's empathy as a storyteller was exactly what the project needed. Jones personally convinced him to take the risk, telling him the story was bigger than fear. Spielberg later admitted that saying yes to this film changed his entire career. It forced him to grow beyond fantasy and adventure into deeply human storytelling. Fact number 2. Oprah Winfrey's first acting role before The Color Purple. Oprah Winfrey was only known as a local talk show host. She had never acted in a movie before, and Hollywood didn't take her seriously. Still, when she read the character of Sophia, she felt a deep personal connection and decided to audition. At first, she thought she had lost the part because months went by with no news. She was devastated and checked herself into a weight loss camp, thinking her appearance had cost her the role. Then, one night, Quincy Jones himself called and told her she was cast. Oprah said she screamed so loud the entire camp thought something was wrong. That phone call didn't just give her a role, it launched a career that would make her one of the most influential women in the world. Fact number 3. Whoopi Goldberg sent a letter. Whoopi Goldberg wasn't a Hollywood name when The Color Purple was being cast. She was a struggling stand-up comedian, performing small shows in New York and dreaming of something bigger. Believing in herself, she wrote Spielberg a personal letter saying she was born to play Celie. He invited her to audition, and what happened in that room changed everything. Goldberg performed with such raw pain and quiet strength that the entire team fell silent. Spielberg reportedly knew instantly, that's Celie. That audition didn't just win her the role, it transformed her life, turning her into an Oscar-nominated actress in her very first film. Fact number 4. The book faced heavy backlash. Even before cameras rolled, Alice Walker's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel was sparking controversy. Some critics argued it painted African-American men too negatively, while others praised it for exposing cycles of abuse that had long been silenced. When the movie came out, the backlash returned even louder, with protests, boycotts, and public debates. Churches and community leaders split over whether the story was empowering or damaging. Spielberg admitted he softened some of the book's darkest material to make it more universal, but the tension around the film never faded. Still, the conversation it started was important. It forced America to confront topics mainstream cinema rarely touched in the 1980s. Fact number 5. Danny Glover almost said no. Danny Glover, cast as Mr., hesitated before accepting the role. He was afraid playing such a cruel, abusive man would stick with audiences and damage his career. His fears turned out to be real. After the film's release, some fans refused to separate Glover from Mr. People confronted him on the street, angry at him as if he truly were Celie's husband. But Glover eventually decided the role was worth the risk because the story demanded honesty. He threw himself fully into the performance, knowing it might cost him personally. In the end, his terrifying portrayal of Mr. became unforgettable. One of the most hated yet iconic characters in cinema history. Fact number 6. Spielberg avoided R rating. Spielberg struggled with how dark to make the film. Alice Walker's novel has graphic violence and abuse, but Spielberg knew the studio feared an R rating. So, he softened certain scenes, choosing implication over brutality. Still, the weight of trauma lingered in every frame. Many critics later argued this choice made the film more watchable for mass audiences but also less raw than the novel. Spielberg himself admitted years later that he might have held back too much. Fact number 7. Oprah almost lost the role. During casting, Oprah was terrified she wouldn't be chosen. She even checked herself into a weight loss camp after hearing rumors she might be too heavy for Hollywood standards. One night, she received a call from Quincy Jones himself telling her she was Sophia. Oprah said she screamed so loudly that everyone at the camp thought something terrible had happened. That single phone call changed her life forever and made her believe in her destiny. Fact number 8. The film faced boycotts. When the movie premiered, it wasn't welcomed by everyone. Some groups boycotted theaters, arguing it painted African American men as violent and abusive. Churches and community leaders debated it openly. But despite the controversy, audiences showed up in droves, and the film became a cultural flashpoint. For many, it wasn't just a movie. It was a mirror forcing society to confront uncomfortable truths about family, power, and silence. Fact number 9. Whoopi almost didn't get Celie. Whoopi wasn't the only actress considered. Before she was discovered, names like Alfre Woodard and even Diana Ross were floated for the role of Celie. But none of them captured the fragile resilience Spielberg was searching for. When Whoopi auditioned, Spielberg said he instantly knew, "That's Celie." Her performance was so raw that many cast members broke into tears during takes. Without Whoopi, The Color Purple would have been a completely different film. Fact number 10. A rare non-musical Spielberg film. In the middle of the 80s, Spielberg was making blockbusters like E.T. and Indiana Jones. The Color Purple was his first time directing a serious, grounded drama with no fantasy or spectacle. Critics doubted whether he could handle such heavy material. But Spielberg proved them wrong, showing that his gift for emotion and detail worked just as powerfully in quiet stories as in adventure films. It marked a turning point in his career, where he became known not just as a blockbuster director, but as a serious filmmaker. Fact number 11. A star was born for Whoopi Goldberg. The Color Purple wasn't just a debut, it was an explosion. She went from small comedy clubs in New York to being nominated for an Academy Award in her very first film. Critics were stunned by her ability to capture Celie's quiet suffering and inner strength. Goldberg later said that Celie wasn't a character she played, but a spirit she carried. That spirit turned her into a star overnight and laid the foundation for a career that would span decades, from Ghost to Sister Act to Star Trek. Without Celie, Whoopi might never have become the legend she is today. Fact number 12. Filming was an emotional roller coaster. The cast often said working on The Color Purple felt like living inside the story. Many scenes were so emotionally heavy that actors cried even after the cameras stopped rolling. Oprah described the dinner table confrontation as the hardest moment of her life on set. She shook so violently that she couldn't calm down for hours. Spielberg later admitted that he sometimes had to step away from the monitor because the raw performances were too overwhelming. For many, it wasn't just acting, it was a form of therapy, a painful but healing way of telling truths that had long been ignored. Fact number 13. The controversy was explosive. When the film premiered, it divided audiences sharply. Some celebrated it as a groundbreaking story about resilience and female empowerment. Others accused it of tearing down black men and fueling stereotypes. Protests erupted outside theaters. Debates filled television panels. Even cultural icons took opposing sides. Spielberg said he had never experienced such heated reactions in his entire career. Yet, in the middle of all the noise, the film stayed strong. People kept watching, and it kept sparking conversation. Decades later, the controversy itself is part of the movie's legacy, proof that powerful art doesn't leave people comfortable. Fact number 14. The music was its own character. The score of The Color Purple wasn't just background sound. Composer Quincy Jones made it an extension of the story. He mixed gospel, blues, African rhythms, and classical notes to capture every emotional shade. The film's music didn't just accompany the story, it spoke for the characters when words weren't enough. In fact, some scenes were written around the music, letting the soundtrack dictate the emotional pace. Jones believed the film needed to sing its pain and joy. That's why the score still feels timeless, as if it belongs to both the past and the present all at once. Fact number 15. Spielberg's biggest regret. Steven Spielberg has often admitted that The Color Purple left him with a deep regret. He said he softened some of the novel's harshest truths, especially its portrayal of sexuality and abuse. Looking back, he believed he didn't push hard enough, that his fear of controversy kept him from going all the way. He later confessed, "I didn't have the courage." Even so, audiences and critics praised the sensitivity and humanity he brought to the film. Spielberg's regret became part of its history, a reminder that even masterpieces can leave their creators wondering what more could have been done. Fact number 16. A set filled with tears. The filming environment was heavy. Many cast members admitted they cried between takes because the story cut too close to real-life struggles. Oprah said sometimes she couldn't separate Sophia's pain from her own memories. Even Spielberg confessed there were days when directing felt like carrying a weight on his chest. That raw emotion translated directly onto the screen, giving the film its haunting authenticity. Fact number 17. Danny Glover faced public anger. After the movie's release, Danny Glover's life changed in an unexpected way. His portrayal of Mr. was so convincing that many viewers couldn't separate him from his character. People would confront him in the street, yelling at him for the cruelty he showed to Celie. Glover later said he understood the anger. It was proof that the film had struck a nerve. But it also showed how blurred the line between fiction and reality can become when performances are too real. Fact number 18. Spielberg left out important scenes. Fans of the novel noticed that certain storylines were missing, especially Celie's romantic relationship with Shug Avery. Spielberg admitted he didn't feel confident portraying that intimacy in 1985, fearing backlash from both studios and audiences. Over time, he called that decision his biggest regret with the film. Many believe if he had kept that part, the movie might have been even more groundbreaking for its time. Fact number 19. A soundtrack with roots. Quincy Jones didn't just produce the film, he poured himself into the music. He blended gospel, blues, and traditional African rhythms to create a soundtrack that felt both personal and historical. Every note was designed to reflect Celie's journey from silence to empowerment. For Jones, the music was another voice in the story, carrying the weight of centuries of struggle and resilience. The score later became just as celebrated as the film itself. Fact number 20. It inspired a Broadway musical years later. The Color Purple was adapted into a Broadway musical. It became a major hit, winning Tony Awards and reviving interest in the film. The stage version allowed for deeper exploration of Celie's inner strength through music. Many fans who discovered the story through theater later returned to the 1985 movie, giving it new life across generations. The film didn't just make history. It kept inspiring new art for decades to come. Bonus fact. Spielberg proved himself. When Spielberg agreed to direct The Color Purple, critics doubted him. Could a man known for aliens and adventure handle something so human, so painful? By the end, he had silenced those doubts. The film showed that Spielberg wasn't just a blockbuster director. He was a storyteller capable of tenderness and truth. That shift shaped the rest of his career, leading him to make other serious dramas like Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. Without The Color Purple, Spielberg's path might have been completely different.